Okay, we are back. So I went and answered the phone. It was actually my grandmother calling. It was really nice to talk to her for a couple minutes. So as you can see, we've finished 2 of our lengths now. We've got the orange bead. It's orange, blue, gold, blue, orange, and then blue, gold, blue, orange. We're going to do another blue, gold, blue, orange, and then we will finish this bracelet. So, wrap twice here. And grab 2 of my blue beads, well, 1 of my blue beads for now. Go ahead and stick it on there. Sorry, I'm just adjusting my bead here because it wanted to slide out of the framework that I made. We definitely don't want it to do that. And I'll be honest, I totally don't know what I was talking about before I paused the video. So, I guess that's one of the consistencies a lot of people say there are in creative people. Not all creative people, but a lot of creative people, is that we tend to be a little bit scatterbrained sometimes, and sometimes a little bit messy. I certainly would never claim to be perfect or have it all together. That is definitely not something that I am very. Alright, so now for our gold bead. I really hope. It's kind of hard to, I'm trying to, the way I've got my setup, I've got the webcam hooked into my computer so I can kind of see a live video of what you're seeing, sort of, kind of. The problem is that since I'm also making the bracelet, I'm actually looking right at the bracelet a lot. And that means I tend to start working how I'm normally used to working, which means that I can see what I'm working on, but I have no idea if the camera can actually see what I'm working on. So I'm hoping that it does, and you can kind of get an idea of how this is coming here. And of course, as this is only my first one, I may end up redoing this tutorial later when I have better equipment. And this is the 6th one. Alright, so this is going to be the last blue one that we're putting on. And then we will only have one more orange one to do, and we will finish this bracelet. So we run our 2 on the inside. Come here, blue. We put our little blue bead on. There we go. And we do our 2 wraps. And then, alright, so 6 wraps more. 1, 2, oops, these are not very close together. 2, here I'm going to adjust them a little bit. There we go. 3, 4, 5, and 6. Alright, last orange bead, friends. This is it. We are finishing the last set of this autumnal bangle bracelet. You can kind of see me adjusting things as I go. Alright, so here we go. Alright, so to finish this off here, we're going to do 2 wraps just like we would normally with the beads. But then instead of finishing with 6 wraps, like we've been doing 6 in between each of the beads here, we're going to finish with 8 like what we started with. We started the bracelet with 8 wraps on the wire, and then we started putting our beads on. And we did 6 wraps in between. So now we're going to finish it with 8 wraps on the wire so that we have an even... so our bracelet is relatively even. Ooh! 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and ooh, there we go. 8. I think that's 8. Let me count. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Alright, so we have all of our wraps. And then this one we're going to press down, and we're going to kind of clamp with our flat nose pliers. And then we're going to take our flush cutter. Look, you remember that big long 22 gauge wire that we had, that we started with? This little thing here, that's all that's left of it. That's why you always want to make sure you choose a pull a long wire when you're doing it. Anything that's left, like this, you can either throw this away if you want to. I usually save my scraps and use them for little things later on. I have a little bag that I put them in if they're big enough, if they're long enough. This is almost long enough to do a little dangle earring, which I may do a beginner. I may go ahead a little later and do a beginner tutorial for simple wire wrap dangle earrings while I have the wire. Alright, so we'll put that to the side. We cut the wire off using the flush cutters, and now we're just going to make sure that the tail end is tucked real nice and flush against the rest of the wrap. And then we're going to try, so there's our set. You can kind of see how it finishes. Looks really nice. We have, like I said, we would need 4 of the initial bead that we were going to be using, which is the accent bead, which is the orange. We would need 6 of the second one of our choice, and we would need 3 of the smallest bead. On this one, the initial accent was red. The next down was this like gold cream, and then the smallest one was the pearl. So you can kind of see how that turned out. There is definitely, like, if you turn this around, you can see, I don't know if you can tell, but I can tell, and you'll be able to tell on yours, that there's definitely a front and back on this bracelet. The front, the bit that's going to be facing the outside of your wrist, the beads are just slightly more protruding, and that's because of how we placed the beads in there. On the back, they're more like sitting on the frame. So now what we're going to do is, you can see how this side is a little shorter. We're going to kind of look at this side and eye it and try to make it about even with the other side. So I'm trying to, I think it needs to be a little bit shorter, probably about like that, yeah. And we'll cut off our little extra bits. So these extra bits I'm also going to put in my scrap pile. And I kind of wish I knew that that was even. I think this is a little longer, but that's okay. So now we're going to take, I'm going to set my other pliers to the side. Now we're going to, actually I'm going to cut this just a little shorter. Just a little. Okay. I think that's good. Now we're going to take our round nose pliers, and for me that's the 3-in-1 tool. And before we do this, I'm actually going to do a little bit of a turn. We're going to bend the bracelet, because right now it's just a flat strip. We're going to bend the bracelet into a kind of circle shape. Like this. And the really great thing about Parawire is that, like, it's good, high quality, solid wire. And it's also sturdy. It's not like it's bendable, but it's not like it's gonna, especially with the 16 gauge. And so, yeah. And I wanted to let you know too, I should have said it earlier and I forgot, but the reason we use two different, a lot of the times wire wrappers will use two different styles of wire. The smaller the wire, the easier it is to actually wrap. So like the 16 gauge is thicker wire, so it's a little bit stronger, a little bit harder to bend, so it lends the bracelet more structure. Whereas the 22 gauge wire is thinner, it's a little bit easier to bend, and so it's not as difficult to do these really tight, intricate wraps like what we did. Alright, and now that you've got it bent, you can see that I've got it facing, I've got the sides sort of crisscrossed like that. Hold it still so you can actually see. And I think this side is still a little bit longer than the other one, so I'm going to just cut it a little bit more. Because we want our swirls, when we make our swirls like this, we want them to be about the same size, so we don't want them to like be too much one or the other. So I think that's close enough. Alright, so then we're going to take our round nose plier, and like I said, for me that is the 3-in-1 tool, which I will say again, I highly suggest that you invest in one of these tools. They are extremely helpful. I find them extremely invaluable. I have several pairs sitting right next to me. Because sometimes the tips are like slightly different, or they feel slightly different in my grip, and I prefer one over the other, you know. This is my favorite pair. As you can see, I've used it a lot, so much that the handle is getting worn down. But what we're going to start to do here is we're going to start with the curls. And we're going to curl the outside wire on each of these things. You can see, I'm going to separate them a little bit so you can see them better. There we go. These outside wires, like this one here and this one here, we're going to curl them into these smaller swirls. It actually, and I'm going to do this here in a moment, it actually doesn't hurt for you to have that wire snipped a little bit shorter than the inside wire. It makes the curls just a little shorter naturally. And it doesn't have to be much, because they're almost going to be sitting on top of each other. There. You can kind of see how that looks now, with the outside one being slightly shorter. This one needs to be a little shorter. There we go. Alright, so now we're going to curl that outside wire, and we're going to curl it even farther outside. We're not curling it in, we're curling it out. So you're curling it away from yourself. So what I'm doing is I'm taking my round nose pliers, I'm holding it down, I'm clamping the tip with the round, like that. You can kind of, here, I'll turn it a little so you can see. You can kind of see how I've got just the very tip of it, about the middle of the plier. See? And we're going to curl outward. Oh, I slipped. Come on. And you want to curl tight. So I usually pull it a little bit because you want the first initial curl to be nice and tight. You can kind of see how that is. Here, I'll hold my thumb under it. See how that's like a nice little circle. You want that initial curl to be nice and tight. The rest of the curl can be a little bit looser because that's what makes it pretty. But the reason that you want this initial curl tight is whenever we have a loose end of a wire, I do not have a torch or anything that I can use to like melt the end into a decorative ball or something like that. So I like to curl my ends really tight so that they don't catch on clothing, they don't catch on skin and hurt you. And I've never had any complaints with my tight curls, other than unless the person has uncurled what I've done already. So then we're going to just kind of keep curling, but we're going to curl looser. I'm trying to show you kind of how I'm curling. It's hard. I always adjust the curl just a little bit by switching things around a little bit, moving my pliers. The biggest thing I've run into, I've said over and over in this video, and I'll continue to say it, is to keep practicing using your tools. Because for me, I'm so familiar using my tools that I don't even think about how I hold my tool anymore. I don't think about how it feels in my grip. Sometimes I don't even realize some of the changes that I make, like how I went from swirling it in to suddenly changing it like this to adjust it and then swirling it in again. If it weren't for the fact that I'm working on a tutorial now, I wouldn't have even thought about mentioning that. So you can kind of see how that is a nice tight swirl, and it kind of swirls over this wrap here. It looks really pretty. We're going to do the same thing on the other side. Only this time, since we're doing it on the inside, I mean, you can turn the bracelet around so you're curling it out. I'm actually going to curl in. But basically, the point of these swirls is that they're curling away from the bracelet. If you have to adjust your grip to do that, that's fine. Oh, here, I'm going to do this. But the point of the swirls is that they're curling away from the bracelet, not in towards it. And then we'll do another kind of tightish. There we go. And we'll just loosen up a little bit. I'm going to switch grips. And adjust and adjust. A lot of getting my wire wrap, like I said, I tend to be a little bit of a perfectionist. I know how I want it to look. And even if I mess up, I might fix what I did, but I'm going to try and make it look the way I wanted it to look. And hope that nobody notices my mess up. I just did a little bit of adjusting with the flat nose pliers, if you were wondering what I was doing. Fixing the swirl to be the way I wanted it to be. Yeah, but a lot what I do is just practice. It's adjusting. It's making it look the way I want it to do. It's a little bit here, a little bit there. And as you keep working with wire, you will get that sense too. You'll start to realize, oh, hey, I'm being more careful with this swirl than I was being. And oh, hey, that looks neater than my last project. And before you know it, your standard will have gone up and you won't even have realized it. And your work will look so much nicer if you're a beginner. And I'm not saying that your work probably looks bad now, in case you were wondering about that. It's just that a lot of artists, I know for me anyway, my first, like, when I found that first necklace that I had made, it was kind of funny. It was like, oh my goodness, I have come a very long way since I made this, and my stuff looks nothing like this anymore, and it looks so much better than it did. I mean, my work looks so much better. Now for this swirl, I'm doing the same basic thing. As you can see, I made a tight little swirl there and I started curling in. But because I don't want to knock into this swirl and mess it up, I'm going to use my round nose plier, or not my round nose, my flat nose plier, excuse me, to help me curl this in. And I will just grip, I literally grip the whole swirl in the flat nose pliers and turn. And you don't want the whole thing to be curved over top of the other swirl, because the other swirl is important too. So just, I mean, it's a little bit over the swirl. There you go. Kind of like that. And then I'm going to do the same thing on the other side. We'll start with a, oops. Start with a nice tight curl here. And then I'm going to start using my flat nose pliers to curl it inward. I love this song. It's so pretty. Be Thou My Vision. And yeah, sorry, I'm not humming the melody. I'm just gonna keep adjusting it until you get it the way where you want it to go. I'm almost there, I think, but there's just a couple of little things that I want to fix. I'm using my flat nose and my round nose pliers to adjust it as I need to. And I'm just gonna lift it just a little. There. Alright, I think we're done, friends. I think we have just finished our autumnal bangle bracelet. And as you can see, I'm just going around it, kind of making sure that everything is as flat and right as I want it to be. I'm kind of looking at the things. I'm kind of tamping down the wire. But essentially, this is the bracelet. This is how it looks. Okay. There you have it. So this is a relatively easy project, a little bit intermediate, a little less beginner, a little more intermediate, because I feel like you have to have, and the reason I say that is because I feel like you have to have a more of an understanding of how the wire works and how your tools work, and know like how have a little bit of a comfortable feeling when you start making this bracelet in order to really do a good job on it. It can be a little tricky at first to hold the wires together, to do the wraps, to do the bends, but once you are familiar with your tools and a little bit more familiar with the wire and how it's held, it's not a difficult bracelet. Yeah. It's really pretty. I liked how that turned out. Okay. Alright, so now we're done with our fancy new bracelet. I hope you enjoyed the tutorial. I hope you were able to see everything. If you like this video, go ahead and like it. You're welcome to subscribe. I'll be starting a channel. This will probably be the first one on the channel for my art shop called Coffee with Dragons. I'm currently in the process of making a bunch of inventory so I can really take off with that. But yeah, I hope you enjoyed making this bangle with me. Happy autumn, everyone, and enjoy your fancy jewelry. Bye.